Hi everyone, my name is Amity and this is Read by Amity, and today I'm jumping on to take part in the Get to Know My Taste tag. This tag was created by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes and Marinez from My Name is Marinez. I've got my notebook here, there are 15 questions in the tag and I thought it would just be fun to do a tag today, so let's get started. So question number 1 is, how do you rate books? And give a quick rundown of how you rate books. So my star rating being that I go from 1 to 5 and I do half stars and quarter stars. Anything from 4-star to 5-star is considered a favorite, but anything from 4 to 4.75, there are things in it that I wasn't 100% happy with, or I feel like it would make the book better if it had certain elements. 4.75 star is kind of reserved for, I pretty much loved everything about this, but for some reason I can't give it a 5-star, whether that's like it didn't give me that oomph factor, or I didn't cry and I wanted to, or I didn't love how something happened. That's what that is. 2.75 to 3.5 is usually middle of the road. This was a good book, but I'm probably not going to remember it once I've read a few more books. And if it's part of a series, I don't know if I'm going to continue with the series. I'm going to wait and see what other people are saying and how I feel. And if I'm in the mood for it, maybe I'll come back to it. Anything 2.5 is dead middle of the road for me. It was fine. I'm not going to keep it in my collection. It's not a bad book. It just probably wasn't for me, and it's whatever. It's fine. Anything below 2.5, we're starting to get into what I consider mediocre bad books, right? So 1 star is pretty much reserved for books that I hate or I don't want to finish, but I'm finishing because I have to review it or something like that. They are just books that I did not like at all. I thought it was terrible. I didn't think that I thought the dialogue was bad, all of that sort of stuff. 1 star is reserved for books that I really, really dislike, and I'm not going to read the author anymore. I'm not going to continue reading the books anymore. They're just done. 1.25 to 1.75 is not a good book, in my opinion, is not a book that I liked, in my opinion. However, that might just be because it's not a book that I liked, and there's certainly people out there that like them. So I'm not going to rate them 1 star or DNF because, it's just not for me. Anyway, I think that covers it. 1 is terrible. 1 is a terrible book that I did not like at all, up to 2, which is mediocre but not great, to 3, which was fine, but I'm not going to probably remember it, to the late 3s is a good book, to 4s are fantastic books, favorites all times, to 5, which is no notes, 5-star, all that. I feel like I didn't explain that well, and I feel like it's pretty obvious what all of the ratings are, but I see people talking about 3-star ratings like they're a bad thing, and I don't find that to be true, because if 3 stars bad, what the hell is 2 and 1, Anyway, question 2 is, how do you approach reviewing books? Is it analytical, structured, casual, or emotional? For me, it really depends on why I'm reviewing the book, what type of book I'm reading, what format I'm reading the book in. Some books I have a lot to talk about, and, I've thought about it, I've engaged with it in an analytical way. Some books I've just read and been like, that was great, love that, that was entertaining. Some books I love and I want to engage with in a more analytical way and a more structured way, but I don't really have anything to say and I don't know how to speak about them without spoiling them, so I just give them the standard, I love this or I dislike this or whatever it may be, here's the star rating. So it really depends on the type of book that I'm reading, what I'm reading it for. Is it for a book club? Is it for a review like I've been given the arc? Is it just because I read it because I wanted to? Is it part of a buddy read? Why am I reading it? And then what format am I reading it in? Am I listening to the audiobook while I clean the house, while I drive around? Am I sitting down and reading it only physically? Am I doing both? You know, lots of factors come into how I rate or review a book. Question 3 is, what's the book or books that made you a reader? A first favorite or one that got you hooked? So for this one, I have a few. So you can't see them, but on the very top shelf, which is out of frame, I have all of my nostalgia books. I might do a little insert here. So we have the Mary-Kate and Ashley Two of a Kind books. We have the Witch books, Witch. We have the Inheritance Cycle, I think that's what it's called. The Aragon, Brisinga, Eldest, Inheritance, those books. We have all of the Series of Unfortunate Event books. We have the Raven Boys, the Raven Cycle series. We have the Wicked Lovely series, which actually is one of the books that I was going to mention. So Wicked Lovely was introduced to me by my aunt when I was 14, I think. And that was one of the first introductions into fairy books as a chapter book, as an actual novel, not a picture book. So love that series. We have the Ink Spell series. I have my Hunger Games, Percy Jackson, Keys to the Kingdom, and then my Goosebump books. So all of those books are all nostalgia books, and they all really pushed my love for reading. As an adult, no, I was still a teenager. But in terms of books, we obviously have to mention the Twilight series. This is one that I started reading in year 8 in high school, and I made one of my best friends from reading this book and talking about this book. So obviously I have to mention that one. Another one that I don't ever hear people talking about, that my aunt recommended to me, that I absolutely loved and definitely got me started on reading higher fantasy, is The Charmed Sphere by Catherine Azzaro. This one, I stayed up all night reading this. It was school holidays and I read this thing front to back and did not stop until I was done. This copy is not the copy that I read. I actually borrowed her copy when I read that, but it took me years to find my own physical copies of these books because they're out of print now. So very happy to have this and the rest of the series. And I love these covers. I wish that we had covers like this still. But yes, this one definitely got me hooked on reading. I think once I read that, I pretty much didn't stop reading. And now here we are, like almost 20 years later, which is crazy. In terms of the earliest book I read that got me into reading and also pretty much kind of made me the person I am today and gave me the interest that I have today, it's Shelley Barber. I have such fond memories of reading Shelley Barber. This book specifically, the fairy book, the anthology of verse, it got me through childhood. And when I've been on the hunt for all of her books for the last year, when I started finding them at book fairs and in secondhand shops, and I opened these pages, the feelings that this book gives me. Look at this page. Look at that artwork. That's one of my favorite pictures of all time. There's just something about it. These books made me believe that fairies were real, and probably is a good, probably was a escape for me in childhood. So I'm very grateful for the Shelley Barber books. Question 4. Do I have a genre niche? Do I gravitate to a certain genre or do I read more widely? Obviously, fantasy is a massive genre for me. I love fantasy books. Dark fantasy, high fantasy, romantasy, the sci-fi fantasy genre. I love them all. So obviously fantasy is a big genre of mine, but another really big genre that I love, more so in the last 6 years, not going to say it, is horror. Horror, thriller. For a little while there, I read a lot of true crime and just sort of nonfiction books in my early 20s, and I was missing that from my fantasy genre. So I've moved over. Well, no, I didn't move over. So I expanded out to horror and thriller fiction because it kind of filled that void. And sometimes I feel like horror and thriller fiction, maybe not so much thriller, but horror, has a really like strong, impactful message to it. In a way that maybe fantasy doesn't always have for me. So definitely horror. But in terms of a genre that I gravitate towards, I have poetry, plays, I have nonfiction, memoirs, biographies, all of that sort of stuff. I have a ton of classics and modern classics. I have all of my horror and thriller and some mystery. I have general fiction, literary fiction, manga, graphic novels. I do have some romance. Romance is not really my favorite genre, just like straight romance, but I'm kind of getting into it a little bit more. And then, yeah, we have all of my fantasy and sci fi, young adult, adult, it doesn't really matter as long as it's good and it keeps me entertained. And then I have my children's books up the top, which I still sometimes read. So I guess I would say I don't really gravitate towards any particular genre. I read pretty widely. And then question 5 is, do you generally prefer character or plot driven books? And it really depends on the mood that I'm in. I think that if someone was to ask me, I would probably say character driven because I like an introspective book. I like a book where the character is having a lot of growth and kind of finding themselves. Some of my all-time favorite books are that. So I part of me is saying more character driven because that is what is important to me. But I have found that I've read some books where the character growth and the character parts to the plot were not enough to keep me entertained, so much so that I didn't care that the plot wasn't lacking. So I guess overall, I would say character driven books are what I gravitate towards, but it still has to have some plot. It still has to, the story still has to be driven by something. It can't just sit there being stagnant for chapters and chapters. So characters, yes, but with a caveat. Question 6 is, what is a book that you love so much that you don't care if other people hate it? And I have 2 main ones. So let me go grab them. Okay, so the first one is, I would say, probably the less controversial of the 2, and that one is Nevernight and the Nevernight Chronicles in general by J. Kristoff. This question, I'm always going to love this book. And I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, and J. Kristoff as an author is not everyone's cup of tea, but the way that this book made me feel, I really I have a very, very strong love for this book and this series. So I don't mind if no one else likes it. That's not the case. Obviously, it's a very popular book, but I don't care if other people hate this book. It's always going to be a favorite of mine. And the second one is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I know that people don't like this book. I know that it's extremely controversial, and there are a huge amount of trigger warnings in this book, and I'm not recommending it to anyone. I'm not saying that this book is the most fantastic book in the world. Everyone should read it. It's incredible, because I know that most people are not going to be comfortable reading this, are not going to get what I got out of this book, and are just going to be more hurt by this book than anything else. But for me, this is one of my life-altering, brain chemical changing books. This book, I don't know how to say, but it healed a part of me that I didn't know needed healing. So I will always love this book, but I'm not going to ever push it on anyone or recommend it or expect anyone to love it or defend it or anything like that, because I understand that it's not for everyone. So your points are valid if you don't like it, if you think it's trauma porn, if you feel like it's too much. But I can tell you right now, people do go through what happens in this book, and it is healing for some people because it was healing for me. I definitely find this a favorite of mine, and it doesn't matter how many people dislike it. It's not going to change my opinion on the book. Question 7 is, what is a book that you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you know that your reading tastes don't align? I think it's pretty obvious with this one with A Little Life, that there are books that I love with all of my heart that I know that people don't like. And I think that I read widely enough that if there's a book that I love that someone else doesn't like, there's probably a high chance that they also have books that they love that I love. So I don't think that there is a book that would make me think that my reading tastes just don't align with them. I suppose that more so a kind of vibe, a thread, a theme, that if you don't enjoy books where women are centered, where people of color are centered, where queer people are centered, where those minority stories are centered, then I'm probably not going to align with your reading tastes, because if you can't read a book from a perspective like that and enjoy it, then I think the question there is more about our morals and our beliefs not aligning, and that maybe is where our reading wouldn't align. So, I don't know that there's a specific book, but in general, if you are reading from one set perspective all of the time and aren't willing to branch out to other perspectives, then maybe our reading taste isn't going to align. So I guess that's my answer. Question 8 is, what is in your trash pocket? Books or tropes that you know are bad, but you love them anyway. Books or tropes? Books or tropes? I feel like that's so subjective. Okay, maybe the Housemaid books by Frida McFadden, because I'm not going to take them out, they're all here. They are, actually no, because I did not really like The Housemaid is Watching. I suppose that kind of book does count. I'm not really sure what to call that trope or that book specifically, but that kind of book where it's entertaining at the time. You keep flipping the pages. The storyline is pushing forward. You're hooked. But when you finish, you go, oh yeah, that was good. Like, I enjoyed that. Was it life-changing, riveting? I'm going to read this book again and again and again? Probably not, but I enjoyed it. The popcorn books. So, yeah, I guess I would say those, but I wouldn't consider them bad tropes or anything like that. There are tropes that I know I don't like and that are bad, but I don't like them. So, you know, I think because I'm only just sort of newly branching into the romance genre, that I don't really have tropes that I know I like or don't like. I don't know why I did this, but I haven't really, like, I don't pick up books based on tropes. So I'm not looking for the tropes in them. So I guess that's kind of hard to answer. But yeah, I guess popcorn, thriller, mystery type books, maybe. Question 9. Do you have any deal breakers in books? I guess that kind of miscommunication trope. Miscommunication trope to drive the plot and just for the sake of it, where they don't, where they're just constantly miscommunicating over the same thing over and over and over again. Oh, it drives me insane. I also don't really like any pregnancy trope books, anything like that. But those are the sort of things that aren't deal breakers. I suppose I don't really read them. I don't really pick them up, I suppose. Yeah, I guess. Question 10. What's a strong opinion you have about a book from the last year? A strong opinion about a book from the last year. I suppose I don't really have a strong opinion about a book from the last year. I do think that actually this opinion is more about the publishing industry and that sort of thing in general, is that these indie published books that are picking up a ton of traction and then getting published by traditional publishing houses are not getting the edits that they deserve and are not getting the attention that they deserve before they're getting published, because publishers are so driven by the potential to make money off that. And so it's great that indie authors are being picked up and I love that their books are getting published. However, you're getting backed by a traditional publisher and your book is not getting edited the way that a book that is published by a traditional publisher usually gets edited. So now your book is being compared to traditionally published books and completely torn to shreds. There are so many books that have been published in the last few years that I feel like could be phenomenal books, specifically in the dark romantasy genre, because that is kind of having its massive boom at the moment. These books are obviously extremely popular indie published books that everyone loves. But because of, as a symptom of the type of book that they are, they're usually not handled by more than a few people that look over the book. And this isn't for everyone. Some people do have editing teams and books go through lots and lots of edits before they get indie published. I'm not saying that every indie publisher is like that, but I'm noticing as a symptom of this that these books that maybe don't get a full editing team looking at it and going through it and doing, story edits and then line by line edits are then getting pushed out by these big publishers who are excited because these books already have a known fan base. They can make a bunch of different editions and they feel like they don't need to then also put the same amount of effort into polishing this book than they do a book that has only been picked up and published through traditional senses. So I think for me, rather than a strong opinion about a book, my opinion is that I think that books are not getting edited the way that they should be getting edited. They're not getting the attention and care that they deserve the way that books used to get. And this is all a symptom of capitalism, of greed. So it's sad that that is impacting that. I think for me, I would rather pick up an indie book by an indie author, knowing that it hasn't had the same amount of hands on it that a traditionally published book has had, and going into it expecting that, over not knowing that an author has published a book indie already and is now being republished traditionally, and picking up a traditionally published book and expecting it to be polished the way that a traditionally published book generally is or was, and getting an indie publish. You know, I don't know if I explained that well. And that's no hate to indie publishers, indie published books and authors either. I love so many indie published works. Question 11 is, what do you look for in writing? I think that that's the question. If it's not, we're just going to have to roll with it because that's what I've got written here, I'm pretty sure. But in writing, I like my writing to be descriptive. I don't mind a little bit of flowery writing, but it still has to have a point. I like the metaphorical, magical, realist kind of vibe for a book, as long as that's what I'm going in knowing that I'm wanting. I like a bit of dialogue, but not so much that it makes things clunky. And, you know, I'm pretty much open to read anything. I don't really think too much about what I'm looking for in the writing. I just kind of pick up the book based on what I'm interested in and then let the story tell me what it's going to give me. And then if that works for me, I'll keep going. And question number 12 is, how do you decide what to read next? So essentially, I'm a bit of a mood reader. I look at my TBR, look at books that are available to borrow or listen to, and kind of decide from there. I also have book clubs that I'm a part of, and just sort of go from there. So I have a little bit of a TBR, a little bit of structure, but ultimately I am a mood reader. Question 13 is, where do you get inspo for Booktube? And I get inspiration for Booktube by watching Booktube. I don't post too much. I'm trying to do better this year, which I think that I am. But I have been watching Booktube and before that AuthorTube since about 2014. So I'm always watching Booktube. That's mainly what I watch on YouTube. I'm always on Bookstagram. I'm always looking at publishing news and what people are doing. I'm actually genuinely interested by it, not just reading, but by the content that people create. So that's pretty much what inspires me. At the moment, most of my book talk is kind of reading wrap ups because I am not new to it, but just getting back into it. So we'll branch out soon. But for now, reading wrap ups, maybe TBRs, a tag here or there. I'm going to try and do reading vlogs, but we'll see. So, yeah. Question 14. If you could make any book go viral right now, which would it be? Right now, because it's top of mind for me, and I've just purchased the books so that my aunt can read them. The Goddess of by Randy Garner, and this is the Fragile Divine trilogy. If I could make this series, this trilogy go viral right now, I absolutely would, because I want more fan art of this book. I want more people talking about it. I think this book deserves, and this trilogy deserves, all of the love that it gets and more. So that would be the Fragile Divine series, or the Goddess of, specifically book 1. And the last question, book 15, is, who are some booktubers whose reading tastes are similar to yours? I think because I read so widely, I find that I have quite a few booktubers that have similar reading tastes to me, but I'll list a few here, and then I'm going to also put a bunch in the description down below because there are so many channels that I love and I think align with me. So we have Locke's Library, Books with Mackenzie, Bookishly Joe, Gavin Reads It All, Books and Lala, Thoughts on Tomes, Sid the Bookworm, Fanboy Reads, Spicy Cats Reads, Plant-Based Bride, Jan Agathon, Jordaline Reads, and Booked and Busy. There are at least another 20 out there that I watch regularly that I think I align with very well. So I'm going to share all of them down below, but off the top of my head, these are the ones that I am constantly getting book recommendations from, and I'm constantly checking in and reading the same books that they're reading and, having the same kind of taste on books that they are reading. So yeah, that is the Get to Know My Taste book tag. I'd love for you guys to do that. If you're watching this and you want to do it, please tag me in it so that I can see it. And I'll see you again next time. Bye.